Hello, hello. Can everyone hear me? Cool. And I'm assuming everything is looking good because I cannot see if the screen is okay. Cool. So, yeah, in a very Silicon Valley-esque way, I guess I'm going to be contrarian, and while everyone's talking about the future and what's next, I'm going to be like, okay, let's go to the past. And I wanted to focus on the origins of media. The reason is because I feel like we are all here hopefully feeling uncertain, or at least that's how I feel, not just with my job, but also with how the field is looking. And in fact, the very essence of what diffusion models are is kind of like making order out of the mess that the noise is. So anyways, my name is Diego Rodriguez, co-founder and CTO of Krea, and this is my little research about the origins of media. So let me start by telling you a story. A few days ago, actually, CEO Fal and me were at an event where we were listening to this guy that some of you may know. His name is Mark Andreessen. He's the father of, you could argue, the modern web browser. And he was asked the question, like, why are hyperlinks blue? And he usually says just this answer is like, oh, because it was my favorite color. And that's it. However, I wanted to go deeper because I think that there was actually something else there. And then I was like, yeah, but they don't look like this. They could be yellow. And then I went deeper. And then you realize that, like, once you start understanding how our visual system works, we basically have some cells called the rod and cones, and they react to light that looks like red, green, and blue. Yeah, that's where RGB comes from. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like, there's a very interesting density of blue cells. And also, if you actually account for how sensitive we are to certain colors, you realize that it's all about contrast or changes. Like, that's how our perception works. And notice that the color for hyperlinks is the farthest away from white, which is how most websites were looking back then. It was just white and hyperlink. I was like, oh, it's probably because it was the easiest to see. And that's why you chose it. So I just thought that was interesting because I feel like sometimes we take all of these things for granted. Like, oh, my favorite color. It's like, but what do you mean? I was like, so no, Mark. Like, it's not that it was your favorite color. It's that it was humanity's favorite color because it resonated the most with us. By the way, if you start doing some 3D manipulations of these color spaces, you can see that it explains dark mode too. Green is the one that is the farthest when you're in low light, and that's why night vision looks like that. And that's why terminals look like that. So I love doing these kind of like rabbit holes because they give like a sense of meaning and like explain how the world works in a way where everything is changing and everything's full of marketing fluff, and it's like, Agente, what do you mean by that? And I just get confused, right? Rabbit holes. Where do they come from? Turns out that it's from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, 1865. So words that Lewis Carroll wrote in the 1800s still resonate with us to the point where it represents somehow what I'm doing or what I was doing at 1 a.m. as I was getting ready for this presentation. So the power of media travels through time, all the way through here, even across death for 1800s authors, right? But what is media, really? I was like, well, technically it's pluralized medium, but a medium for what? I was like, okay, for waves of what? Of everything. What do you mean everything? Matter and energy. When I talk to you, all you guys are hearing is just particles that it's emitting through expensive equipment, busting into your ears. They start resonating. You have some little hair cells that resonate to certain frequencies, and there you go, information has traveled. And what you're seeing, like me, is just photons, which is a different type of wave, and you're just reacting to them. So that's all media is. It's like a place through which these vibrations, it's just a place through which vibrations go. Vibrations mean change. And then these, I know this sounds like it's so simple and like, dude, what the hell are you saying? And it's like, it actually has a very tremendous implication. We can only sense change. Like sounds, even what we call silence, like sometimes like the white noise, is just actually incredible amounts of change. That's what we can feel. We cannot feel otherwise. So here's where I stopped as I was writing my presentation. And this, through intuition, I don't know why, like the word resonance came to me. I was like, why did it, I started asking myself, why did that come from as I was doing this? Like, I guess maybe I was thinking, will this resonate with my audience? I don't know. And then I was like, what I like to do whenever I'm like listening to my intuition is I go on my old friend, the dictionary, and be like, am I right here? And then lo and behold, the first definition of resonance is the ability to evoke or suggest images, memories, and emotions. And secondly, it's like, oh, and by the way, it's also this physics thing about prolongation of sound or whatever. I was like, I actually would have thought that it was the other way around. Okay, look at this image. It's a boar painted in the Altamira cave in Spain, roughly between 10 to 15,000 years ago. You'll notice it has like many limbs. It's meant to give an illusion of movement when seen inside a cave with fire. It's the earliest cartoon known to mankind. And when I look at this, I just need to ask myself, like, dude, what am I taking for granted? Because there has to be something more than just, how do you make that image that's difference between that image and what's today? Like, how have our assumptions changed? Because you could argue, oh yeah, we take for granted the brushes, Photoshop, digital imaging, printing, like many things, right? But I actually, through the making of this presentation, I actually realized that there was something way more powerful that I thought that it would be useful to everyone here, entrepreneur, creative, investor, customer of Krea, hopefully, whatever. It's the separation of medium and message. That didn't used to be the case. Like, there's a saying that is like, oh, the medium is the message, but actually until very recently, it truly was. Like, if you wanted to see that particular animation of the Altamira cave, you had to go there. And like, for those people, I assume that there was no like concept of a medium and a message. It's kind of like it's the same thing. Like it's a rock with some with some pigments, and that represents an animal, but that's it. And actually, it was very recently, like even Renaissance. So we fast forward almost 10,000 years or more, and it's still Mona Lisa is like this thing that everyone actually tried to copy, and then actually that's where a lot of the bad connotations start appearing. Like, oh, but it's derivative, something else. Even though it was actually trying to convey the exact same thing, suddenly it's like, no, it's a copy. It's not the original. It's like, so there's something that started changing, right? After all, I feel like it's a very natural question. Like, what could a picture be independent of its medium, right? Like, what is that? So, 19th century, we achieved camera and microphone and radio. So there you go. We achieved faithful reproduction. And then, interestingly, that's where a lot of creative backslash started. Like, I started looking into it. I was like, oh no, like pictures made with a camera, what they would call soulless. And like also with like if you wanted to listen music on the radio, it was also soulless by the creatives. Like that's kind of like the first moment, and I think it was because it was the divergence of this phenomenon. Then, 20th century, we basically discover how to turn analog, because even though we're doing faithful reproductions, it's still analog. Because if you make a painting and then you are able to take a picture of that and then you reveal it, it's still all the waves of the natural world. It's still like photons. So it's all analog. And what we achieve is that now we're actually able to encode these as bits, just zeros and ones. And with that, you can actually recover in a faithfully reproductive way the exact same thing, like to the radio, or not like, it would be more like digital radio or like TV. It would be like, no, it's the exact same thing. Like, don't worry, there's no not too much loss there. We can get into the details with compression, but there's no need. The important thing is we discovered this universal medium. Call it the wire, call it fiber optics, doesn't matter, but you can just transmit anything if you really think about it. So they called them back in the day picture elements or pixels. Pixel, that's where it comes from. So at its core, a pixel is nothing more than a way to encode visual information. And this has a very tremendous implication, because it means you can codify images, which means you now have a code that you can assume that someone else will interpret and an image will appear. But then the implication of that is, wait a minute, what if I don't encode anything, but just give you a code that I made up? Will it able to interpret it? It's like, yeah, you can actually make up your own bits and pixels. So that was kind of like interesting, because until then it was kind of like whatever was in the real world, that's what we can capture, and now we can faithfully reproduce it, but suddenly you can tweak it. And that's where I think creatives should have started to get excited. It's like, oh man, that means I can make unreal worlds real for the first time. And obviously, yeah, like funny enough, the first expression of this phenomenon was Toy Story 1, 1999, 20th century. So imagination turned into labor, but turns out it's hard work. And if you think creating fake worlds it's easy and cheap, then talk to Hollywood or Pixar, and they will tell you it's not easy nor cheap. Which brings us to today. Here's me. Here's me. Here's also me. By the way, that was made in Korea. It's all representations of something deeper. I hope. I hope that I'm more than three words on a picture. The pronoun me, uttered by this human on stage, the full name Diego Rodriguez within the context of Silicon Valley and generative media means something. So it's all a representation of the person who's talking to you right now. But again, it's just a representation. And I feel like just like in the 19th century we achieved faithful reproduction, and in the 20th century we achieved encoding of certain representations. What happened today is that we achieve a way to encode something that creates representations at a multimodal level, which, by the way, used to be just called multimedia, but now they changed the terms. So with everything that I've talked about now, I just hope that I'm able to convince you at a very fundamental level that just like our unknown friends a few years ago, all we're doing, again, is just one thing: taming a new medium. Like, we have been doing this almost since we are humans. And I feel like the latent space is this weird sounding thing. It's just a new medium, so it's like, just like, I guess, when you see the ocean or you see space, it's very scary. But if you tame it, then you can achieve sea travel, air travel, space travel. Well, I don't know how to call this, maybe latent space traveling. But that's what we're doing. So we have to tame it, which is why creatives are needed, engineers are needed, investors are needed, entrepreneurs are needed. But it's just funny because all we're trying to do with this new medium is the same thing as always. Start and say, let me tell you a story. Thank you.